Engines screamed through thick, humid air, choking on heat, dust, and jungle mist. Below, the canopy burns, green turned to ash by tracer fire. Anti-aircraft guns erupt from hidden positions, flashes in the trees invisible, but deadly. Bandits incoming. 12 o'clock high. Radio static cracks, then silence. A lone aircraft dives out clouds. Not sleek, not polished, not even built in a proper factory. Rough edges, mud-stained panels, wings assembled under canvas tents, in the middle of nowhere, and yet it moves like a predator. It drops low, skimming treetops, too fast for targeting, too unpredictable for interception. Enemy gunners panic. Fighters struggle to lock on, because this machine wasn't designed in comfort, it was born in chaos, built in a jungle, forged under pressure, and somehow it became a legend of the skies. This is the story of the aircraft that wasn't supposed to exist, but changed the war anyway. The air over the Pacific jungle wasn't meant for machines. Humidity clung to everything. Metal warped, engines overheated, instruments failed without warning. Runways weren't runways at all, just carved out strips of dirt, barely long enough for takeoff. And yet, in this unforgiving environment, a different kind of aircraft was taking shape, not in polished factories back home, but here, surrounded by palm trees, mud, and constant threat of attack. Mechanics worked with what they had, limited tools, salvage parts, and relentless pressure. Supplies were scarce. Time was even scarcer. Every rivet mattered. Every mistake could mean death. But necessity does something strange in war. It forces innovation. And innovation creates legends. At first glance, this aircraft didn't inspire confidence. It wasn't the fastest on paper. It didn't carry the heaviest guns. It didn't have the thickest armor. But it had something far more dangerous. Adaptability. It could take off from rough jungle strips where others couldn't. It could endure conditions that grounded more advanced machines. It could strike quickly and disappear before the enemy even realized what had happened. Pilots didn't just fly it. They trusted it, because in the chaos of jungle warfare, trust meant survival, and survival meant everything. Enemy forces began noticing a pattern. Supply lines disrupted. Convoys attacked without warning. Aircraft appearing from nowhere, low, fast, and lethal. Reports came in, scattered at first, then consistent, then alarming. There was something operating in the jungle, something they couldn't predict, something they couldn't stop. Pilots described it differently. Some said it was too fast to track. Others said it flew too low to detect. A few insisted it was everywhere at once. But all agreed on one thing. It was a problem, a serious one. Back in command centers, analysts tried to piece together the threat. What kind of aircraft could operate under such conditions? How was it being maintained? Where was it coming from? The answers didn't make sense, because this wasn't a machine built for ideal conditions. It was built for war in its rawest form, improvised, adapted, relentless, and that made it dangerous, very dangerous. As the conflict intensified, so did its role. What started as a necessity became a weapon. What started as a compromise became an advantage. Pilots pushed it harder. Missions became riskier. Engagements more frequent. And each time, it proved something important. It belonged here, not in clean skies or controlled environments, but in the chaos, in the heat, in the jungle, where survival wasn't guaranteed. And legends were born the hard way. The jungle never sleeps. Even at altitude, you can feel it. Rising heat currents, unstable air, sudden drops that shake the frame. Sweat drips inside the cockpit. Instruments flicker. Visibility shifts from clear sky to dense cloud in seconds. And still, they flew, because there was no alternative. Every mission launched from these primitive strips carried risk before the aircraft even left the ground. Mud could swallow landing gear. Debris could tear through propellers. A slight miscalculation, and the jungle would claim another machine. But those who flew this aircraft understood something others didn't. This wasn't just about performance. It was about survival in an environment that punished weakness. Other planes needed perfect conditions. This one adapted. Pilots began pushing it further than intended. Lower altitudes, tighter turns, riskier routes. And something unexpected happened. It didn't fail. It responded, like it had been built for this, not despite it. Ground crews worked through the night, patching bullet holes, reinforcing panels, modifying systems with whatever materials they could find. No manuals, no standard procedures, just instinct and experience, and the growing belief that this aircraft was becoming something more than just a machine. It was evolving. Each mission refined it. Each repair improved it. Each survival story added to its reputation. Soon, it wasn't just another aircraft operating in the Pacific. It became a symbol of resilience, of ingenuity, a defiance against impossible conditions. And as the war pressed deeper into jungle territory, this unlikely creation was no longer adapting to the battlefield. It was shaping it. The Pacific theater of World War II was unlike anything seen before. Vast distances, scattered islands, dense jungles, limited infrastructure. Traditional aircraft struggled here. Long runways were rare. Maintenance facilities were minimal. Conditions were brutal. This is where this jungle-built legend made its mark. It wasn't just an aircraft. It was a solution to a problem no one else had solved effectively. 1. Historical context. By the early 1940s, control of the Pacific depended heavily on air superiority. But operating aircraft across jungle-covered islands created logistical nightmares. Many advanced planes required long, prepared runways. Others couldn't handle the humidity or rough conditions. This aircraft changed that equation. It brought air power into places where it previously couldn't exist. 2. Technical advantages. Its design emphasized practicality over perfection. Short takeoff capability allowed it to operate from improvised airstrips. Its range enabled deep strikes behind enemy lines. Its durability meant it could absorb damage and still return home. It wasn't overloaded with unnecessary weight. Every component had a purpose. Every feature served survival. Pilots could fly low, below radar, below detection. Speed wasn't always about raw numbers. It was about positioning. And this aircraft mastered that. 3. Combat story. One mission stood out. A supply convoy moved through jungle terrain, heavily guarded, expecting no aerial threat. They believed they were safe. Then the engines came. Low, fast, unseen until the last second. The aircraft burst through the tree line, weapons firing. Chaos erupted. Trucks burned. Defenses collapsed. Within minutes, it was over. And just as quickly, the aircraft vanished back into the jungle skies. No pursuit, no retaliation, just destruction. 4. Enemy perspective. Enemy pilots grew frustrated. This wasn't a conventional threat. It didn't engage in predictable dogfights. It didn't follow expected routes. It appeared suddenly, struck precisely, and disappeared. Trying to intercept, it was like chasing a shadow. Reports described it as untraceable. Ground forces feared its sudden attacks. Air units struggled to counter it. It disrupted not just operations, but confidence. 5. Strategic impact. Over time, its influence grew. Supply chains weakened. Enemy movement slowed. Air dominance shifted, not through massive bombing campaigns, but through precision, adaptability, and persistence. It proved something critical. You didn't need perfect conditions to win a war. You needed the right tool in the right environment. And this aircraft was exactly that. AS operations expanded. Commanders began relying on this aircraft for missions others refused. Recon runs over dense jungle corridors. Low-altitude strikes where visibility dropped to seconds. Emergency supply drops into isolated units cut off from support. It became the aircraft you sent when failure wasn't an option. Pilots exploited its strengths with precision. Flying below treetop level, they avoided radar and visual detection, approaching targets from unexpected angles. They disrupted enemy defenses before they could react. In dogfight scenarios, it didn't rely on brute force. It relied on positioning, surprise, timing. Enemy pilots trained for altitude engagements found themselves disoriented, forced into unfamiliar combat conditions where this aircraft had the advantage. Even mechanical limitations became tactical advantages. Its lighter structure allowed rapid maneuvering in tight airspace. Its simplicity meant faster turnaround between missions, while more advanced aircraft sat grounded for maintenance. This one kept flying, again and again and again, until its presence alone became enough to alter enemy behavior. It never had the spotlight of the famous bombers. No massive formations, no dramatic headlines, just quiet efficiency, mission after mission, surviving where others couldn't, winning battles few people ever saw, because its war wasn't fought in open skies. It was fought in the shadows of the jungle, where every takeoff was uncertain, and every landing a victory. Its legacy isn't just in the missions it completed, it's in what it proved. That innovation doesn't always come from perfection. Sometimes it comes from necessity, from pressure, from the refusal to fail, built in a jungle, forged in adversity, and remembered as a flying legend, because in the end, it wasn't where it was built that mattered, it was what it became. War has a way of revealing what truly matters. Not always the biggest weapon, not always the most advanced design, but the one that endures, the one that adapts, the one that keeps showing up long after others are gone. This aircraft did exactly that. It wasn't built with luxury. It wasn't protected by ideal conditions. It didn't have the advantage of certainty. What it had was necessity. And necessity is a powerful force. Because when something is built out of pure need, stripped of excess, refined by pressure, it becomes something different, something focused, something resilient, something dangerous. Long after the war moved on, long after newer aircraft took to the skies, the legacy of this jungle-born machine remained, not just in records or reports, but in the mindset it created, a shift in how war could be fought, how environments once considered impossible could become operational, how limitations could be turned into strengths. Pilots who flew it never forgot it, not because it was perfect, but because it never gave up on them. It brought them home, through storms, through fire, through conditions that should have ended the mission before it began. And that kind of trust, that kind of reliability isn't designed. It's earned, piece by piece, flight by flight, survival by survival. History often remembers the giants, the heavy bombers, the iconic fighters, the machines that dominated headlines. But beneath that history are stories like this, quiet, overlooked, yet just as powerful. Because without aircraft like this operating in the harshest conditions, adapting where others couldn't, the outcome of entire campaigns might have been very different. This wasn't just a machine of war. It was proof that innovation doesn't wait for perfect circumstances. It happens in the middle of chaos, in the heat, in the mud, in the jungle, and sometimes the aircraft built in the worst possible place becomes the one that defines everything that comes after, not because it was meant to be legendary, but because it refused to be anything less.